Mr. Speaker.
I call Catherine Delahunty.
Mr. Speaker, the Green Party would like to take a call on the NZQA and issues associated with it, because we think that in education the distinctions are sometimes very important between the roles of different agencies, and we're not actually criticising NZQA here this evening. We think that NZQA have a pretty clearly defined and distinct role. But we're quite concerned that there's been a decision in the budget or a proposal amongst the many rumoured mergers that there may be a merger between NZQA and the Education Review Office. And I think that's quite an important issue when you think about the relative functions of NZQA and ERO.
Point of order, Joe Gucci.
Mr. Chair, I just ask you clarification. I believe we are dealing with the financial review of NZQA as opposed to any announcements in the budget.
The brief is, I hear what the member says, the brief is that we are looking at the performance of this as recorded in the 2010 and current operations. So there is some leeway, although I just remind the member that we are on the financial review of this New Zealand Qualifications Authority. Catherine Delahunty.
And operations of NZQA, the Green Party thinks that they have a very distinct role dealing with qualifications in the sector, and we believe that that role needs to be maintained and upheld, and that in the past year the whole issue of qualification has been a major political debate, not only in NZQA but right throughout the education sector. We think it's very important that NZQA should continue to focus on the level of qualification that they do best, which is, right across the sector of a certain age group of young people, and we think that NZQA does a reasonable job of that. But we do think there are current discussions about merging NZQA with the Education Review Office, and although that may be seen as the future, we have to look at both the current financial performance of an organisation and its capacity at present to actually carry out any broader functions. And we are concerned if NZQA functions do not carry on as they are currently described and become part of a broader agency focused purely on measuring and assessment. I myself have written NZQA documents. I worked in polytechnics for many years, and I do understand what NZQA does, but I do not think it's the same thing as the kind of educational review that other agencies carry out, and I do think that its functions do not need to be expanded into areas which could potentially risk the integrity of what goes on in schools. So although we're not critiquing the financial performance, we are saying that there is a risk if we start to broaden that, what it could mean, because those agencies have very different functions, those two agencies that have been signalled, and we believe that we do not want to see ERO become more like NZQA, and NZQA's functions are quite clearly described. We would rather see NZQA continue to do its job without subsuming any other agencies. And its current practice, it does not go into schools and measure. It goes in the way that ERO does, which is a deep and profound whole-of-school approach. NZQA's role is to look at very restricted performance in terms of certain outcomes and in terms of certain unit standards. And it's no longer new, and it's developed through a lot of struggles, and it's become quite proficient in the way that it does that. But if it should subsume ERO, we would have very deep concerns, because it belongs, Mr. Chair, in a wider debate. And the role of NZQA needs to be part of that wider debate about what are we doing and what have we done in the past year on educational standards in this country. And we are in the middle of a fierce political debate about the type of education we want at all levels in this country, and we don't want to see a loss of the holistic and the broad in schools in exchange for the narrow. One of the struggles we had, those of us who started teaching early on under NZQA, was the fact that it had a certain mechanistic and narrowing of the curriculum, and that is appropriate for certain types of learning, but it's not appropriate for the compulsory sector. And so we would have grave concerns if that is what happened, if it was moved into a broader role and it stepped outside the narrow definition of what NZQA is currently achieving. And why I say it's a broader political debate is because right across this country right now there is a struggle going on about whether we narrow education or whether
Sorry to interrupt the honourable member. The time has come for me to leave the chair. This debate is interrupted. I shall resume the chair at 7:30.